So I'm Scott Stevens, and woodworking is my hobby. It's not my profession, just a hobby. I started getting into woodworking many years ago, but the big tipping point was, well, along the way I would read woodworking books or mainly toy making books. And one of my goals was when I started having grandchildren, I started making wooden toys. And about 6 years ago, I had my first grandson, so I started making wooden toys for him. And I've really enjoyed doing that. So I do that about 2 or 3 times a year. He gets a wooden toy. Or he'll get something made out of wood, such as a learning piece of wood or woodworking. But anyway, so along the way, I wanted to also find ways to challenge him while he's playing with toys. So I started studying woodworking books for wooden toys that did things, that had some mechanism to them. So here's an example of one wooden toy that I made. It's actually a combination of about 4 designs from other people have built, but I took those designs together because I like the different components of them. So this is a front end loader. It's a bifurcating, which means it pivots in the middle when it steers. So it's a little bit different than some front end loaders. Some are tractors and they have front wheels that turn. Anyways, this front end loader also has a little ratchet mechanism here that brings up the front end, and it'll stay there. One of the issues in toys is a lot of times they'll do something but they'll flop down. Well, this stays where you want it. And then I also wanted a dump mechanism, so I added this little lever system to be able to. He could pick up something, and then pick that up, and then he could pick this up and then drive around, and then go dump something. So, in the process, I was looking through a bunch of woodworking books, trying to find ones that had designs like this that did things. And I came across a couple of authors that had wooden machines that they designed. Shoot, that's great. I never even thought about wooden machines, but you think back centuries ago, all the mechanisms were either out of wood or rock. And really the ones that were most probably easier to develop were out of wood. So you think of Da Vinci or Archimedes. They built wooden machines. They also did artwork and other neat things too. So here's an example of a piston machine. So I'm cranking this, and you have your cam mechanism here and your piston machine or mechanism. So I used different hardwoods to emphasize the cam mechanism. Really grateful so I could work with different hardwoods to emphasize different parts of the mechanism. So here's my piston machine. That's one of my favorite machines. This is a universal joint. You'll find this under your car. This is the drive shaft that you find in rear-wheel drive vehicles. So I have a little wheel here that I turn back and forth, and it changes the aspect of the drive shaft. See, back and forth there. So as I'm spinning this, it works better when it's spinning. You can see that this universal joint still spins. It allows these 2 drive shafts, they don't have to be perfectly linear, they can bend. So as your car is going down the road, it's flexing and twisting and turning. And your drive shaft actually has to be able twist and turn as you drive down the road because there's potholes or the road is uneven. So this is what's going on underneath your car. You find this in tractors and many mechanisms, trucks, and so forth. And of course I use different hardwoods to emphasize the main components. The focus point to me is the universal joint, which is this right here. Here's an example of a roller bearing machine. I really had never heard of a roller bearing machine until I saw this design. These little wheels or rollers here actually roll, and they go down these slots. So these slots are like gear teeth, but these wheels push down on those little grooves and drive this roller bearing machine. So I have to turn this 2 times for this to turn once. And again, I used dark walnut and cherry to emphasize the gear itself, and lighter wood, oak and maple to not emphasize the base and things like that. So this is a great way that some youth or people that are interested in mechanisms can sit down and play with it, or people that are interested in woodworking, they can challenge themselves with another aspect of woodworking, because this takes a lot different skills than you might think. So here's a really neat gear. This is called a Geneva gear. So if you notice, this has 6 slots in here. So this wheel has to turn 6 times for this wheel to turn once. But this wheel stops in between while this one's still spinning. You'll find this mechanism in clocks or anything that you have, something that you're trying to step something through in a mechanism. This mechanism it goes from a circular motion to linear motion. So this, I'm turning a crank back here, and it's spinning this wheel, and this wheel is driving a peg up and down in a circular motion and making this back and forth. It's pivoting on this fulcrum here, and if you look at it closely, it actually goes faster one direction than the other. And that's the reason for that is that it has to travel this distance, which is equal to this distance, but it has to do it over longer. Well, it's farther from the fulcrum. That's what the deal is. All right, so that's rotary to linear. So you might see this like in a candy machine. You put your money in, you turn the dial, out comes your little gumball or whatever. This is called a Roulux cam. Now, I messed it up. It's a French name, so there's probably a better way to say it. So this is a triangular cam, but it's curved on each face of the triangle. So that's the Roulux. And this triangular cam is driving a square hole. So I was fascinated by this interaction between a triangle and a square. Now, where do you find this? Well, you may not find it too much anymore, but you will find this mechanism in the old movie projectors. So envision a movie strip going across here with those little square holes in it, and it's pulling the movie strip one frame at a time across there. This goes in that little square hole and moves it. So that's what this mechanism is. There's a mechanism I saw on YouTube, and it's just I just was fascinated by these bars. I'm not a mechanical engineer or anything. I just have always enjoyed the ways things move, and I love the way this works. So I just thought it was kind of cool, so I made it. Don't ask me what it's for, but it was a challenge for me at the time.